How much do you need to retire at 55? This is a question I get asked a lot as a financial planner. In this video, what I'm going to do is teach you exactly how financial planners work out if somebody can retire at age 55. This is going to be based on historical market data, and what I'm also going to do is give you a variety of retirement incomes. So that's going to be from £2,000 a month, i.e. how much do you need to spend £2,000 a month in retirement, all the way up to £5,000 a month. But if you're new here, my name's Ben, I'm a financial planner, and my aim is to help as many people as possible gain more clarity and confidence around their financial plan. Okay, so first we need to look at what exactly I mean by historical market data. We look at the past 100 years of market returns. Now by doing that, that gives us the ability to say, if you've retired at any point over the last 100 years, what are the chances that your plan would have succeeded? i.e., would you have had enough income and pension to be able to fund your expenses for the remainder of your life? Now, why is this important? Now, depending on when you've retired at any point over that period, your maximum spend in retirement would have been very different, because if you retire at a point where markets are very buoyant and doing very well, clearly that's going to be very beneficial for you. However, if you retired at a point where markets were in a downturn, for example, during the financial crisis in 2007, 2008, that would have had a dramatic impact on your longer term financial plan. By using 100 years of back-tested market data, that then gives us the ability to give you a percentage chance of success. And simply what that means is that if you retired at any point over that 100 years, what are the chances that your plan would have been successful? So what I'm going to do is go through a step-by-step process in terms of how we as financial planners like to look at these things. And to start with, I'm going to use a figure of £2,000 a month. So basically what I mean by that is, how much do you need in your pension to be able to retire with £2,000 a month? Now, the first thing to mention is that if you are planning to retire at age 55, it's likely that you are not going to be able to access your pension until age 57. And therefore, it's important that those 2 years where you can't access your pension, you're going to need some other money there to be able to fund your expenses. Now, what I've done for purposes of this video is assumed that you've got an ISA. Now, you can access an ISA whenever you want. So what I've done is made the assumption that you've got 2 years worth of your expenses saved in an ISA. So if we start from the position of spending £2,000 a month, so £24,000 a year, I've assumed that for those 2 years, you've got £48,000 in an ISA, which you can use to fund your expenses. So firstly, let's look at the figure where that provides a 100% success rate. So effectively what that means is that if you retired at any point over the last 100 years, you would have been able to fund your expenses regardless of when you retired. So basically that's a 100% success rate. And in this scenario, you would have needed £900,000 in your pension. And again, this is in addition to the £48,000 that I've assumed you've got in an ISA or an equivalent to fund your expenses from 55 to 57. Okay, so let's try and be a bit more pragmatic about this now, because whilst the 100% success rate is obviously really good, as financial planners, this isn't necessarily what we're aiming for, because it can massively overinflate the amount that you actually require to be able to retire. And the reason for that is because you can make changes along the way through retirement. And if we're sitting down with you to say in 2 or 3 years' time, for example, markets haven't been great, we can adjust and adapt the plan accordingly. So instead of aiming for a 100% success rate, what we like to do is aim for a 90% success rate. So how does that impact the amount you need in your pension? So you can see here that that figure actually falls from £900,000 to £725,000. So you can see here that although we've only adjusted the success rate by 10%, it has a huge impact on the amount you actually need in your pension. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. And that is something that some people overlook. And that is the fact that you are likely to have a state pension come into payment. Now, when this comes into payment, it's going to vary depending on how old you are. So for most people, this is going to be 67 or 68. So when this comes into payment and when we factor this in, how does that change the amount you need in your pension? So again, you can see this has a massive impact again on the amount you need. So this reduces the amount from £725,000 to £500,000. So as I say, it's really important that you factor the state pension in, because that can have a huge impact on the amount you actually need in your pension. Now, the final adjustment we make is one that some people overlook, and that's the fact that, I've said here you're going to be spending £2,000 a year, when in reality, we often see that people spend more in the early years of retirement and less in the later years. So it's really important that we are factoring this in when we are building someone's financial plan. So in this example, I've assumed that you're going to be spending £2,000 a month from the age of 55 to 75. And at that point, we're going to reduce the assumed expenses by 25%. So that's going to go from £2,000 a month to £1,500 a month. You can see here the impact that this has on the amount you need in your pension. So again, the amount reduces from £500,000 down to £430,000. And finally, I thought I would just add this in because one thing to, I suppose, make note of is the fact that when I run all these figures and use historical market data, I've assumed that your pension and ISA are invested in a balanced portfolio. So very roughly, that's going to be 50% higher risk, 50% lower risk. But what I thought it would be interesting is showing you how the number differs if you take a higher level of risk. Now, some people have this idea that if you take a higher level of risk, you might actually need more in your pension because you are taking a high level of risk, and therefore there is the risk that you actually run out of money sooner. You can see here that by taking that high level of risk, you are actually in a position where you need £400,000 in your pension rather than the £430,000. Okay, so now we've run through those steps for £2,000 a month. Let's now run through the figures for £3,000, £4,000 and £5,000 a month to see how that has an impact. So you can see for £3,000 a month, you're going to need about £780,000 in your pension. For £4,000 a month, you're going to need about £1,150,000 within your pension. And for £5,000 a month, you're going to need £1,550,000. Now, there's something else that we've not factored in here, and this is the fact that all of these figures have assumed that you are on your own and you have one state pension. However, for most people, they're going to be in a couple. So what this means is that you're going to be potentially entitled to two state pensions. So as I said, for most people, their state pension is going to be £12,000 a year, and it's going to start from age 67 or 68. So if you are in a position where there's two of you and you're both going to get the full state pension entitlement, how does that have an impact on the amount you actually need in your pension? So this shows the impact that this has. So you can see for £2,000 a month, the required pension pot goes from £430,000 to £270,000. For £3,000 a month, the figure goes from £780,000 to £550,000. For £3,000 a month, the figure falls from £1,150,000 to £900,000. And for £5,000 a month, the figure goes from £1,550,000 to £1,250,000. Now, it's important to note that when I am giving you these pension pot totals, when I factored in you having two lots of state pension, that pension pot size is the combined amount. So let's take the £5,000 a month example. Although I've said you're going to need a pension pot of 1.25 million, that's a combination of both of your pensions. So one of you might have £400,000 in your pension, the other one might have £850,000 in your pension. So between the two of you, you would hit that 1.25 million. Now, clearly having a target pension pot size is great. But the problem with this is that it doesn't really account for how much you need to be putting into your pension now because it's focusing on the end result. So what I would suggest you do next is check out this video here, which talks about how much you need to be saving each month at different ages to be able to retire at 60. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video. Hope you got some value from it. If you did, please do subscribe to the channel because it really would mean a lot to me. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video.